Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Villa No Filler. Please remember to like and subscribe. I triple underline that subscribe there. And if you don't subscribe, apparently that makes you a Birmingham City fan. It means you want them to come up from League One and get back up into the Premier League within a few years. Surely you don't want that. Surely you got to subscribe now because of that. Anyway, with that out of the way. I didn't do an instant reaction on Saturday, and yesterday on Sunday I was very busy. I haven't really had much of a chance to talk about the Bournemouth game at length, although me and George have done the audio version that's gone out today, so you can go download that on Spotify, Apple, and wherever else. I thought I'd just do a quick summation of what I saw at the Bournemouth game. I was there. I travelled up. I did a big old day trip up to Birmingham for it. I think just one thing I would say is that a couple of people I know who were at the game mentioned it to me as well, actually. They thought it was a slightly flat atmosphere. Now, I think that Aston Villa, from what I remember as a kid, I remember Villa did used to be really, really flat, primarily because we were so rubbish for such a long time. But I think in the last kind of 5 to 6 years, I think the atmosphere has definitely improved substantially. And I guess that's because for a few years I haven't been able to go as much. So I probably noticed it a little bit more rather than fans who may be going every single game, season ticket holders, potentially. That just when I go, I do feel like, wow, Villa, it's much more lively than it ever used to be when I was a kid. And the atmosphere is better. And obviously, Unai Emery's, amazing revolution has obviously helped as well with the excitement levels. But I just think there's a lot of stuff around it that when I go to games now, I see that new fan park that's around where the players come in on the bus. I think that's been a great addition. And I think it just adds to the vibe of everything. It encourages fans to get there earlier. Therefore, fans spend at the stadium. Therefore, revenues go up. We all annoyingly have to think about things like that now. I think the club shop is incredible. I think they've done a fantastic job with that. Um, and I look forward to seeing what's going to be coming with the warehouse as well. As you can see, they're building that at the moment. And then in the concourses, look, I think we all know Aston Villa's concourses. If there's a lot of improvements that I think we'd like to see, that is going to take time. I do think I walked in and I found that there was a self-service beer tap, which I don't really remember last season. Maybe I'm totally not, I just didn't use it. But this year I thought, I can. That feels new. So I used that, and it was, it's quick service and all that, and quicker than standing in the queues. Obviously, there's a lot of things to improve, but at the same time, like I do think the general vibe around the place is a lot better than it used to be. And What I would say is that I think on Saturday, with others I've talked to, felt it was a bit flat. I see what they mean. Did think it was a little bit flatter than it has been. And I think it's, maybe just Saturday afternoon, Wednesday night, the Champions League game. I think maybe as a club, we as fans and the players as well, are maybe just adapting to the new reality of being a team that plays in these high octane, high energy, under the floodlights, exciting games against European teams on the Wednesday night, exert all that energy, and then they have to go again on the Saturday when it's, it doesn't feel quite as exciting, does it, playing Bournemouth in the Premier League when you've just played in the Champions League against Bayern or Bologna or whoever. But that's the reality, and so I imagine maybe there is just a flatness of energy that is difficult to rouse yourself for, but it will come. It's just something that we're adapting to maybe as a team. And I think it maybe came across a little bit in the game, but at the same time, I actually thought Aston Villa played really well for most part, and I think the only problem was we just didn't score enough, didn't score early enough, so that when we did score. The players that were on the pitch were the players you sent on to get the goals, and that they were probably not the ideal players you would have to see out a game in the last sort of 10 to 15 minutes when you're 1-0 up. You probably do then want to McGinn on instead, don't you? Whereas he'd come off because we're going after the goal to win it. So if we got that goal a bit earlier, I think then it probably would have gone from 1-0 to 2-0, change the subs and, see the game out. But instead, made a rod for our own back by just not being clinical enough in the early stages. Now, I'll go to the tactical pad, and there it is. So, with Aston Villa, Uh, this was the team I predicted Aston Villa would go with. I was wrong by one player, and that was that Leon Bailey did not start. John McGinn did, and Jacob Ramsey was the man who went out on the left. And actually, when I did the match preview the other day, I did talk myself into thinking that Jacob Ramsey probably should start because what we've found against Bournemouth before is that whilst they are a high intensity, harder, faster, stronger team with pressure really hard, they're a great side. I think Iraola's done a fantastic job with them. I really like watching Bournemouth. But the thing is, if you can break that press, as Aston Villa have the players to do, and as we showed we can do when we beat them 3-1 towards the end of last season, and as we showed, I think, on Saturday as well, you can then find yourself in quite a lot of space. And it was quite interesting, I think, what Bournemouth were doing. So this is what I felt was happening is that Araujo started. He came off very early on. I don't know whether he got injured or whether they felt that Ramsey was just having a field day against him. I really don't know. But Araujo was basically sticking very tight to Jacob Ramsey and trying to ensure that he didn't have a lot of space. Ramsey still managed to get in behind quite a lot. So I'm not sure how great a job he did. But what was also happening was that as Luka Dean was trying to get forward, I watched this in the stadium. Ouattara was constantly just on his case. So it kind of rarely felt like Luka Dean was able to impact the game in an attacking sense in the final third in the way that Aston Villa fullbacks or left backs are usually able to do. And I thought that was quite a smart tactical approach from Iraola. And I think that when Villa had the ball at the back, Enes Unal, who was the big physical player to try and hold it up, he won quite a lot of aerial duels. When Villa were trying to pass it out, Unal was tending to stick quite close to Pau Torres. So I think that was their plan, was to try and negate us playing down the left-hand side, try and stop us being that attacking force that we are. And I think in some ways it actually worked quite well. I think, though, they had to take Araujo off because I just feel like Ramsey was getting in all the time. So yeah, I think it was quite an impressive approach. And then I think they put Semenyo on Matty Cash. And I think Cash, by and large, I actually thought, he's been getting quite a bit of stick online, I've seen. I thought Cash actually did quite well. Only because in this area here, I think that Semenyo wasn't really impactful much at all in the first half. And I think Cash, did quite a good job sort of standing up to him. What I did think was happening quite a lot was that Semenyo was coming inside quite a bit in that first half and wasn't really sticking out so much on the wing, and it was more Kirkes coming down the left-hand side. That kind of felt like what was the Bournemouth were trying to do. So yes, I think Bournemouth approached it pretty well. I think tactically they did quite a good job in trying to ensure that we weren't too great going down the left-hand side, particularly. But I think in the second half you did start to see Semenyo have more of an impact. It felt like he was much more involved in the game, and I think we saw hints of his quality. I don't think it was his greatest game, but I think we saw signs of him where you thought he is a very, very good player. He can play either left or right hand side. And I think, to be honest, if Aston Villa had a spare 50, 60 million quid going next summer, if I saw that he was, if bloody David Ornstein saying Aston Villa have agreed a fee, I would not be totally against that at all. I just think he's got a very high ceiling, 24 years of age, going places in his career. But Unal obviously came off second half, and Evan Nilsson, I talked about him the other day. He had a great showing at Porto last season. His numbers were very good. I think he's coming to the Premier League, and it's obviously going to be an adaptation for him to play for Bournemouth and to play in the Premier League, and for the rest of the Bournemouth players to adapt to playing with him, because they're obviously used to playing with Dominic Solanke, who's a player who likes to go out wide and probably hold the ball up more. Evan Nilsson's movement is different to his. But Evan Nilsson got his first goal against Southampton a couple of weeks ago. It was a great finish. He won the penalty against Arsenal last week, which led to Bournemouth going 2-0 up. And had David Raya not taken it down, Evan Nilsson would have scored, and it was an open net. And then against Aston Villa the other day, he manages to break free and head the ball in for his second goal for them. So you'd think for him, he's going to go up and improve for them. Obviously, Tavernier came on as well. Now, one thing I would criticise Villa for, though, what the hell were we doing in that last 10, 15? And this is where I talk about it. It felt like we didn't have the players on the pitch to see out the game. I don't think we had the players that you'd really want there to in a defensive scenario. And I thought that it was Matty Cash gave a foul away on the left-hand side. Bournemouth sent a ball in. We dealt with it. Leon Bailey gave a foul away in almost an identical spot soon after. Again, Villa deal with it. But if you keep giving those stupid fouls away, you're going to pay for it. And in the end, Ross Barkley, honestly, I was in the stadium. I was quite close to where he did it, fouling Tavernier, who's going nowhere. Matty Cash is there to deal with it right in the last minute, and I could not believe it. I just put my head in my hands and thought, mate, you've scored the goal today. You've been brilliant for Villa so far as a signing, but that is just brain dead behaviour. And I think it's part of Aston Villa's maturation process as a team. We're still growing, we're still learning, we're still, 2 years into the Unai Emery phase. It's not early days, but he's here until 2029. So relatively speaking, it is still quite early on. And these experiences where Villa have to learn, you can't be giving idiotic fouls away like that. 3 of them in the last 10 to 15 minutes when you're 1-0 up and just asking for trouble. And in the end, we paid the price. And, I think people are critical of Cash or Duran for not picking up Evan Nilsson. I don't want to theorise who it might have been who should have been marking them. I think Unai Emery himself and Austin McPhee will both know, and they'll talk to the player or players today at Bodymore Heath. So, look, I think, I've seen quite a bit of negativity around Matty Cash. I actually thought he did all right against Semenyo for the most part, dealing with one of the best attacking players in the Premier League at the moment, I think. I think Cash, look, you can see that the right back area, we've talked about it on this podcast before, that that is where Villa do need probably to upgrade, probably need another option. A bit more competition for Cash, because quite a lot of the time we're putting Konsa out on the right, and it's just not Konsa's best position. He excelled there against Bayern Munich. He's had games where he's played really well there, but I just don't feel like it's where he's at his best. I think he's at his best as a centre back. I think had we got someone like a Hertroider who can play centre back and right back and can go forward and all those sorts of things, I think that would have been a really positive addition to Villa. So I think people should just lay off Cash a little bit. He was lucky to get away with that tackle on Semenyo in the stadium. I thought it was a penalty. Semenyo got booked for going down easy, but I thought, I looked at Cash's face. He looked very. He looked like he knew he got away with one. And look, he gave away a penalty against Bournemouth at the end of last season in 3-1 against Kirkes. He gave away a penalty against West Ham going into Arden Soucek. Gave away a penalty against Fulham, bit unlucky, ball out to his hand, and he nearly gave one against Semenyo. It's something he has to get out of his game. He's playing a bit Matty rash. He looks quite frantic there, and that is just something I think if he wants to improve, stop giving away, rash, stupid fouls like that in the penalty area, basically. But that's not me getting at him. It's just something that he has to improve, basically. But we support every Villa player. I think he does a good job for Villa on a lot of occasions. I'm glad he's back from his injury, and love the man. He's been a key part of Aston Villa for a few years, but it is an area where I think Villa going forward probably are going to be looking to think, how can we add a bit more depth in that area? Now, just a few stats I'll throw your way. Who was the star man, do you think? Who do you think was the star man? I think it's this man, Youri Tielemans again. I think him and Jacob Ramsey, you could say, for me, were the two that stood out on the day. I think Morgan Rogers was very quiet against Bologna. He had, was it 11 take-ons, 7 successful? Against Bournemouth, he had zero take-ons. Now, that might be suggestive that Bournemouth did a very good job with Sinisi, Zabarnyi, Lewis Cook, Ryan Christie, tightening the space around him, getting in on his back, not really letting him turn, get involved. But as well, it kind of you have to remember Morgan Rogers. He's been brilliant for us. He's a fantastic player, but he is 22 years of age, and he is just going to have the style of player he is as well as an attacking player. He is just going to have games where he's not quite as involved. And again, he's getting used to playing those high octane Champions League games, being the star man, and then 3 days later having to go again essentially and refine those energy levels. And sometimes they're just not quite there, and that is just part of your growth process. Yeah, going from 11 take-ons to zero is quite a sharp drop-off. I think it's probably credit to Bournemouth as well. But there was one moment Morgan Rogers had in the game that I saw in the stadium where he did manage to get a bit of free space. And there was an attempted whipped ball with the outside of his foot. He tried to get to Ollie Watkins, and it so nearly came off. My goodness, the pace of it, the vision of it, it was a hint of what a truly potentially world-class player Morgan Rogers could be. It was absolutely amazing, I thought. But by and large, not his greatest game, but everyone's entitled to that. But talking of the star men, I think it was Tielemans and Ramsey for me. Tielemans and JJ, they both had 7 progressive carries each, so both most in the team. Tielemans had 8 shot-creating actions, again, most in the team. Ramsey just behind him with 6. Ramsey also received the most progressive passes on 11. So Ramsey, going forward, trying to make things happen, being involved in the attacking third, or in an attacking sense, you would say. Tielemans had the most passes into the final third with 7. Tielemans also with 13 progressive passes. Second to that was Pau and Jacob Ramsey with 5 each. Tielemans and Ramsey, but they both had quite a low pass completion rate, one of the lowest in the team, actually. 72% for Yuri Tielemans, 56 out of 78 passes were completed, 30 out of 41 for JJ, so he was 73% pass completion rate. But what you could say for Yuri Tielemans is that, a lot of his passes were actually quite long passes. By far in the team, he had the most long passes outside of Emi Martinez with 15. Only 6 were successful. So I don't know whether that suggests that he was trying to play it long into, Ollie Watkins making runs, Jacob Ramsey making runs into a Duran. And obviously when you play it long, it's a little bit more of a gamble than playing it short and simple, isn't it? Sometimes you are just trying to make things happen from deep. And Tielemans has done that a lot this season, and a lot of the time it has come off really well for him. But you'd have to say that, it could also be suggestive that Bournemouth were pressing him well and forcing him into longer passes, or cutting off the space, and again, not allowing him to play it short or medium term as often as he would like, and therefore having to go a bit longer than maybe he would have liked himself. But by and large, if you look at all of Tielemans' stats, he was really, really good. And then something else I just wanted to say as well. John Duran, he came on the other day against Bologna, and he played from most of the game against Bologna. Won a lot of aerial duels in that. He won a lot of aerial duels against Bayern Munich. He won 3 out of 3 aerial duels against Bournemouth as well. So again, that was a really positive stat for him. Best in the team, actually, given the fact he was only a substitute as well. Tackles and interceptions, most Lucas Digne. So Lucas Digne, I think, was involved in an attacking sense. He did try and get forward, though I think Ouattara really did stick tight to him. And I really watched that in the game. I thought it was a super job defensively from Ouattara, and I bet Iraola was really pleased with what he did against Lucas Digne. But Digne did still manage to get involved. But it was just kind of in that final third when Ramsey particularly did manage to get in there, or say Watkins got the ball in a bit of space. It just kind of felt like we weren't making the right decision enough. And it felt to me like in that first half, if we were able to get that goal early, we'd have probably gone on and won 2 or 3-0 because we were playing well enough to do that. But when the goal didn't come, you started to think, is this just going to be one of them days where we don't get a goal and it's 0-0, or they even burgle one and win it 1-0. The Villa of old, that would have happened. But that ain't the Villa of old now, is it? I've talked about Semenyo a little bit. I think he's, in person. I think first half he was pretty quiet, and as I say, credit to Cash and Onana, I think, for that. and Conser as well. But second half, he got much more involved and made a bit more of a headache for Cash. Most take-ons for Bournemouth, Semenyo with 3, 2 successful. Most progressive carries, Semenyo with 4. Most progressive passes received, Semenyo with 9. Milos Kerkez been the other with 6. So Kerkez, of course, the fullback. I mentioned him the other day, didn't I? How he'll break on forward and try and get into that final third. He won a penalty in the final third for Bournemouth last season, and again the other day he was getting forward and doing a good attacking job, taking it progressively, trying to make things happen. Ouattara attempted 3 take-ons, but none came off. So you've got to give Luca Dean credit there. You'd have to think he was the man, by and large, stopping that from happening. And most tackles and interceptions for Bournemouth was Milos Kerkez with 4. So, no, fair play to Bournemouth. I think they're a really top side. If there's any Bournemouth fans watching this, I really love watching your club. I think Iraola is a fantastic manager. I love what the Basque Country are doing at the moment. Unai Emery, Iraola, Julian Lopetegui, Mikel Arteta. That's just Xabi Alonso as well. That's just 5 managers off the top of my head who are just a miracle. It's a miracle of a region. The coaches and players they produce, and I think we've got to sign again. Just what a top manager, top coach Iraola is. They made it hard for Villa. They really don't let you settle. But Villa, I think, showed their quality as well the other day in that I think we dealt well with that hard press. We're harder, faster, stronger. We're a physical side now. We can deal with that. But I just think we just didn't take our opportunities early enough. And then once we got that goal, we didn't really have the profile of player on the pitch to see the game out in the way you would want. Profile of player is maybe the wrong word. It's maybe more the leader role. Maybe a Mings you'd love on there, and McGinn you'd love on there to just scream and shout at anybody, because we started making poor decisions. We weren't retaining the ball. Duran wasn't really holding it up in the way you'd like to see for a striker when you're just sort of trying to retain the ball. And then in that final 15, I think that ideally you probably don't have Bailey on as a defensive player, have more of a McGinn. Anana's maybe on. Did have Kamara on though, in fairness, and then Martinez was going long quite a lot. But then I think ultimately it was more, maybe not necessarily going long and all that sort of stuff. It was just giving stupid fouls away. That was the ultimate big problem for Villa. It just felt like we were inviting pressure more than we usually do, and then giving those fouls away was idiotic in the last 15. But you live and learn, don't you? We are still in a learning process. We're still getting used to that Champions League midweek, following it up on the weekends, and that's something that as a club and as a fan base we are going to have to get used to. But it will come. It will come. What a team, what a club. I love the mighty Aston Villa. I love talking Villa. Let me know what your thoughts about the Villa against Bournemouth. Let me know if you think it could be 2 really costly points dropped, particularly with the fixtures we've got coming up. And let me know who you thought was man of the match and who you thought for Bournemouth as well stuck out to. Comment down below. I love chatting to everybody. I haven't got back to everybody in recent games. I've been very busy, but I will get to those comments on the channel as well. So thanks, everybody. Please like and subscribe. Up the mighty Villa.